Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I'm Mr. Kadim Khan and I am a lecturer in the Institute of Computing, Guwahati University of Science and Technology. Today we will take lecture number 10 of the subject of software engineering, in which we will discuss the rational unified process model of the software development process model. This is the discussion agenda of the lecture. We have the RUP model, that is the rational unified process model. Then we have the diagrammatical representation of the rational unified process model. Then we have multiple phases in the RUP model, which is very much important to understand different phases of the RUP model. Then we have the application of the RUP model, and then we have the advantages and disadvantages of the RUP model. The rational unified process model is in fact a process model which is defined by a rational corporation. Rational corporation which is subsequently acquired by the IBM. That means our rational corporation is now a part of the IBM, and the rational unified process model is defined by the rational corporation, which is the early contributors of the development and refinement of the unified process model. And in fact, our rational unified process model is completely based on the tools and technologies. In the previous model, we do not have any concepts about the tools and technologies. In fact, that previous models are not talking about the tools and technologies under which the products should be developed. But here, the rational unified process model is in fact concerning with the tools and technologies. Another important concepts in the rational unified process model is the concept of the UML. Basically, UML is used in the RUP model. UML, Unified Modeling Languages, in fact, a software development and designing framework in which we design different sort of the patterns and the frameworks for the development. Here, the UML convert the requirement into such a format which can be easily developed. So basically, rational unified process model is one of the modern process model that is using the UML concepts for the software development. It is a good example of a hybrid process model. Basically, RUP is the hybrid process model. Hybrid means combination of two or more than two process models, because it brings together the element of all the generic process models. For example, waterfall models and prototyping model is the generic process model, and also it's in fact support the iterations. Iteration means different versioning in the products, and also it illustrates good practice in specification and designing. So good practices means that here you will use the UML concepts in the development by using the specification and designing. Specification here means the requirement specification. That means the what are different requirements of the customers. The RUP recognizes that conventional process models represented in a single view of a process. Basically, single view of the process means that it in fact utilizes all the concepts in just one process. That is the UML concepts, the development concepts, and also specification and designing concepts. There are multiple phases in the RUP models. Basically, first one is called inception. Inception means to establishes the business goal of the product. Business case here means the business objectives. That what sort of the benefits we are going to gain from the product. So this is the inception phase, which means the first phase, in which the product should be developed, but it defines the business objectives of the product. All the external entities, including the people and systems, should be identified, and these activities will interact with each other to define the systems and the services. So here, all the entities means that people is one of the entity, and similarly the other system which will interacts with our product is also an entity. For example, printer is a system. Similarly, camera is a system. So that is the system. Similarly, software system as well will be, for example, um, the Google Map is a software system. So these are all the external entities which will interact with our product. Then we will use the information to assess the contribution that the system makes to the business. Here it means that what the information are required to do the business. If this contribution is minor, for example, it means that if our the business advantages are minor, then the project may be cancelled after this phase. For example, after inception phase, we identified that the business objectives or the business benefits are not so much, and also these are very much minor for us. Then it is not important to develop the product because it will be the loss for the customer as well as for the organizations. The next phase is called elaboration phase. The elaboration phase is to make the understanding of the development and also the understanding of the problem domain. As its name indicates, elaboration means make ourselves very much clear or certain understanding of about the problem. So here we will do understanding about the problem and the understanding about the development. So it establishes an architecture framework for the system and develop the project plan and identify the key project risk. So here we will create a framework. The framework will be such a format are the patterns which will be used for the development. So this is just a paperwork in which we will define the framework, but it will be developed using certain tools of the UML. So this frameworks can also be very much automative, and in which we will see that how the data is passing from one component to another component, how the component interacts with each other, how the input output operations has been performed. So here we will define the frameworks and also we will develop the project plan. Here we will in fact identify different sort of the plans, for example, avoidance plans, contingency plans, minimization plans, development plans, requirement analysis plans, etc. So all the plans are identified here and the key project risks are also identified and their resolutions are planned. So here the key project risk means that factors which can affect quality, cost or schedule of the project. The risks are those factors which can affect the project seriously. If these risks may occur, then the projects may also be failed. Sometimes the risks may be not very much serious and these risks may be resolved and they may be in fact we can uh, neglect all these risks. One on the completion of this phase, you should have a requirement model of the systems. Requirement model of the system means you have all sort of the use case diagrams, scenario diagrams, all the behavior diagrams. So all these diagrams are in fact integrated into the unified modeling language in the form of the use case diagram as specified. An architecture description of the products. Architecture description means how many components can be utilized in the development of the projects and how these components will interact with each other to define the usage scenario of the customers and also the development plan for the project. Development plan for the system means that which types of the technology will be used for the development like the languages and others database technologies are similarly compilers etc. So here we will identify the development plans and how many components will be developed and how the development will be performed by the different programmers. Next phase is the construction phase. Construction, as its name indicates, here we will practically implement the software using certain tools and technologies. The construction phase is a phase in which design, we will construct the designs and the programming, and then we will test the products by the programmers. So here different parts of the system are developed in parallel and they are integrated with each other, and then we will in fact develop the system. On the completion of this phase, we have a working systems and associated documentation which is ready for the delivery to the users. So when this phase is completed, we have a workable version of the product. And the next phase is the transition phase. As its name indicates, Transition phase is means that moving the system from the development community to the user community and making it work in the real environment. Here it means that user community means that to install the product on the user environment so that the user can use this product for their services. So in this phase, this is something which is very much ignored in often most software process model. But in fact, this phase should not be ignored. But it is very much expensive and sometimes problematic activities. But this is very much important because installation on the user environment is in fact necessary phase. On the completion of this phase, you should have a document software of the system that is working correctly in its operational environment. So when this phase is completed, we have a complete documented software system with a proper documentation, and we have to make sure that the system is operational on the user environment. Last phase of the rational unified process model is called production phase. In the production phase of the rational unified process model, it coincides with the development activities of the generic process. So basically in this phase, the ongoing use of the software is monitored. If that means monitoring here, if for example there is certain problem occurring, then we will resolve all this problem. That means the customer usage about the product is monitored. Basically the satisfaction about the customers is obtained, and also the support for operating environments here means that the environment is properly working with the product. That means all the operational environment, for example, here the user interface, um, uh, the operating systems and other hardwares on which the system is working is monitored here, and the defect reports and requests for the changes are submitted and evaluated. Here all the defects and all the requests for the changes and all the customers errors, all these problems which is identified by the customers, they are evaluated. Now this is the RUP model diagrammatical representation. First of all, we have the inception phase. Inception phase is concerning with the communication and plannings, in which we will identify the business goal of the system. Then we have the elaboration phase. Elaboration phase is concerning with the planning and modeling phase, in which we will define the understanding about the problem and also understanding about the domain of the project. And here we will develop different models of the systems using the UML. Then we have the construction phase. Construction phase is concerning with the construction of the product, which means that to practically implement the products in the using different technologies um, of the computer systems. Then we have the deployment. Deployment here means the transition phase, which means that installing the product on the customer environments or the user environments. And the end we have the release phase, also called production phase, in which we will monitor the product. Here we will perform the software increments and the product is released to the customers. But here we will monitor that whether there are certain problems arising or not. For example, the customers identify different sort of the uh, errors or bugs. If they are identified, then we will correct all these bugs uh, by bugs. Okay. This is also another diagrammatical representation, but it utilizes different sort of the graphs here. You can see there are different sort of the graph. First one is the inception, then we have the elaboration, then we have the construction, and the last one is the transition phase. In the inception phase, we will in fact uh, use all the phases of the waterfall model, that is the business modeling, requirements, analysis and design, implementation, testing, and deployment. These are all the phases of the waterfall model. But inception phase, we have less functionalities or less work to do. For example, this is the inception one. We will do here just the business modeling and the requirements modeling. Also, we will little bit the analysis and design, and also very little bits about the implementation and testing and the deployment, because we have no complete code or designings here. That's why in inception phase we have analysis and design, implementation, testing, and deployment. in the form of low quantity, while the business modeling and requirements have higher quantity, because here we will understand the business goals of the system, and also we will define the requirements of the customers. Then we have elaboration phase. In the elaboration phase, we have elaboration 1 and elaboration 2. In the elaboration phase, we will make the uh, understanding about the projects. So here we have the business modeling and the requirements phase, and analysis and designs. We will perform here the analysis and design is completely using the UML, and then we have also the implementation, but this one is less than in the construction because we have not complete implementation here. That's why we will just use here the UML, and then we have the quick implementation. Also we have the testing here, so using all the requirements and UML and the implementation are tested. And also we have the deployment. Deployment means that installing the product on the customer environment. But if we have a certain benchmark or the model or simulation, we will install that particular simulation on the customer environment. That's why we have a very less amount of the elaboration at this phase. And next is the construction. Construction means here we will do first construction, construction 1, construction 2, construction 3, and construction 4. So here we will not use any sort of the business modeling, but we can in fact do here the business modeling, but this will be not more than the elaboration in business modeling. Here we will also do the requirements analysis, but it will be not more than in the previous phase. Here we will also do the analysis and designing, but the implementation will be the most focus here because we are doing here the construction. So here we will more focus on the implementation, and also we have certain testing. For example, we will have maximum testing, then we will reduce the number of tests here because we have less amount of the components, and if there are no components we will do zero testing. If the customer, if the developers provide us more components, we will increase our testings and so on. This will increase and so on, this will decrease here. So that is the construction phase. And also we have deployment during the construction, and we will deploy the products continuously on the user environment so that we will test this acceptance test by the customers. Last one is the transition phase. Transition means installing the product on the customer environment and providing that products practically for the usage. So here we will again do little bit of the business modeling. If the transition phase has certain problems, then we will again do the business modeling, again we will do the requirements, and again we will do the analysis and designs. But you can see there this is completed here, the analysis and design is completed here. So it means that here we will do some part of the analysis of designs, not complete analysis of designing. And also we will do some implementation here, also we'll do some the acceptance testings by the customers, and also here we will do the deployment, which means that practically installing the product on the customer environment. Now there are 6 fundamental practices of the RUP model. Practices means when to use the particular RUP model. Software development iteratively. RUP model iteratively develop the software. Iteration means certain loops here are performed. So tackling high risk elements on every stage of the projects. So here if we have the high risk analysis and high risk resolution factors, we will use the RUP model. And also if the increasing understanding of the problem and make necessary changes until you reach the solution. So as we see in the previous concepts, for example here we have business modeling, which means the understanding of the problem in every phase here. For example, business modeling in the inception, evaluation, construction, and transition. Also, we have requirements here in all these phases, and similarly, analysis and design. So that means that an increasing understanding of the problem. So means that every steps of the development is performed in every one iteration. So here it makes us very much clear to develop the system. Manage the requirements. Here the requirement management is very much uh, performed in a good fashion. So that means that when we are using the good management over the requirements, we are managing the requirements very much properly, then we have to use the rational unified process model. So here the requirement change, documentation about the requirement, trade-off the requirements. Trade-off here means that if one requirements we are increasing, or we are sophisticating, or we are making one requirement uh, more finalized, then the other requirements may also be affected. So here we will also define the trade-off among the requirements. Then also we have the decisions and business needs. If we have certain decisions and the business needs, then we will use the RUP model. Use component-based architectures means that the software is developed using multiple components. The structure of the software is developed into the architecture in the form of the different components. All these components are reusable and they may be developed isolatedly in the products and in the future product as well. These components can be reused. So then we will use the RUP model. Basically, this is defined in the UML. Unified modeling language, you can develop the products into multiple components and each components will be developed isolatedly and these components may also be reused using the object-oriented concepts. Usually model the software. Here all the product is usually developed because UML is the usual development of the product. Basically UML give us graphical notation, so that's why it gives us usual model of the products. Verify software quality. Here the quality of the product is verified. So it enables you to evaluate and control the quality of all activity during the software development. Basically the quality is obtained through the UML because UML develop the softwares using usual layout. Also it gives us good patterns and good frameworks. So that's why through using these good frameworks and patterns we can achieve the high quality. Control changes to the software. It gives you a good control to the changes in the softwares. Overall changes means here, for example, requirement change, designing change, implementational change, and similarly the operational change or the maintenance change. So here we will track all the changes and we will monitor all the changes and then we have the successful development of the software. It also helps to you to create a secure workspace by the isolating it from the changes, which in turn brings you team together, making them work as a unit. So all the units work, all the teams is working on different units, so we can develop the software unit by unit. We can in fact do the team development here. So all the team is divided into multiple units and each unit of the teams develop the software according to the standards. Advantages of the RUP model. RUP model put emphasis on the addressing very high risk area like the spiral model. Rational unified process model also uses the RU risk analysis. It does not assume a fixed sets of firm requirements at the inception of the project, but it allows to refine the requirement as the project evolves. When the projects change, so it gives us good inception about the project, gives us good view about the changes in the project. It doesn't put either a strong focus on documentation or ceremonies. Basically, RUP model do not focus on the documentation. RUP models, in fact, also do not focus on the ceremonies. Ceremonies here means unnecessary gathering. So basically, when the unnecessary gatherings are important, for example, gathering about the different teams, gathering unnecessary teams, just informal teams are informal meetings are conducted in RUP model. So that's why it doesn't focus on the strong documentation and unnecessary meetings. The main focus remains the software product itself and its quality. Best focus is the product by itself and its the best focus is on the quality because the quality is achieved through the different patterns in the UML. These patterns are built in and the standard patterns. Also, RUP model has the disadvantages. The first disadvantage is this one that the RUP model is not considered particularly agile. Agile means very quick development. RUP model do not provide us quick development. It is very formal development, so there is no pair programming possibles in the RUP model. However, the recent studies have shown that another version of the RUP models are the agiles. So here the essential artifacts RUP are now agile, but the previous RUP was not agile. It fails to provide any clear implementation guidelines. So here it do not provide us good implementation guidelines that in which case which technology should be used. So that's why it gives us good, not good, a picture about the implementation of the product. RUP leaves the tailoring to the user entirely. Basically, user is very much involved here, and totally RUP depends on the user because it takes the strong feedbacks from the customers or from the user. So that's why the user is involved very much, and so that's why it totally depends on the user. And sometimes the um, unskilled user, they gives us a bad feedback, so that's why the development will be drifted. So that's why it depends on the user entirely. So this is the end of the lectures. If you have any questions, you can drop an email to me. I will answer your questions. The email is in the footer section of the slides. That is the m.kadeem@kust.edu.pk. Thank you very much, students.